the government has in fact stopped producing the official numbers and across different age groups. So we're looking at above 20% unemployment rate.
I'm here in Dalian with Dr. Qian Lu. She is advising companies who want to invest in China and who need to have more knowledge about China. Thank you for having us here. So what opportunities do you see in China at the moment?
Yeah, so it's quite a critical moment, especially after COVID. The world is looking at China, and Chinese companies are considering how committed do we want to be to continue to invest to the overseas. So I set up my company, Usala Advisory. The purpose is to help business to navigate through the very complex geopolitical, economic, and business environment, especially in the age of China rising. So I advise foreign companies or government of how to understand China better. Is China still investable? At the same time, also helping Chinese companies who are still very committed to go and invest and expand overseas. But it face all kinds of, as I said, geopolitical, business, economic, regulatory, etc. kind of problems and challenges. But at the same time, they see opportunities.
So it got more complicated, one can say this, yeah, nowadays. It's more complicated than, say, it was 5 years ago or so.
Absolutely, unfortunately, that is the case, and I fear that the overall situation in the world are getting more and more divided and decouplings. So we see that as a trend, but at the same time, especially for business, they're thriving and they're working very hard to find opportunities and innovative solutions to solve this, and that is my role to help them to do this.
But can a business decouple from the economic environment or from the political environment?
That's a very good question. So as we look at the world right now, especially US and China, two largest economy in the world, they're not at the best relationship ever. But at the same time, there are many companies, whether American companies or Chinese companies, and many companies from the global south, they're trying to find very innovative solutions to continue to grow. And I certainly see that there are still many, many opportunities and possibilities to do that, even in the background of all these geopolitical complexities. So how do companies do that? And one way to start is to really understand the situation better. Would the two countries, for instance, really decouple? I don't think that's necessarily the case, although I do believe the bilateral relationship will continue to deteriorate. But again, that does not mean that there is no opportunities. And it's really good to see many foreign companies coming to Dalian, the summer Davos, the AMNC as we call it. They're still looking for opportunities to grow. And there are many things about Chinese market, about the Chinese economy that still present a lot of opportunities. Whether we see in sectors such as AI or electric vehicles or climate related, this is still the second largest economy in the world. So China, every year the GDP is about 18 trillion US dollars. And when we look at the world, being the second largest economy is actually larger than number 3, 4, 5, 6 combined. That is Germany, Japan, India, and UK. So that presents a lot of opportunities. There's certainly risk. And if people are expecting China to be like before COVID, if we're still thinking about 10%, 8%, those days are definitely gone. But that does not mean that China is no longer investable. There are a lot of opportunities. And even 5% growth of China GDP every year, that is, China can grow more than an entire Switzerland every year. We're at Davos, right? So every year China grows an entirely additional Switzerland. There are definitely problems, as I said. For instance, when you look at the unemployment rate in China right now, the government has in fact stopped producing the official numbers and across different age groups. So we're looking at above 20% unemployment rate. So
here in China.
So there are, again, opportunities and challenges, but it's very important for people to come back to China and look at what's going on. It's very different from what we read in the news, and at the same time, ultimately, it is through the businesses and collaborations and continuing dialogues that we can find ways to work together.
The Chinese premier spoke about a level playing field between international companies and Chinese companies. So if you come to China, he said, then there will be a level playing field. Do you see this?
the Chinese top leadership has been very committed and consistent in sending the message that China is still very open and that China is very dedicated to opening up and to economic reforms. There are gaps that many foreign businesses are seeing. The intention is good, but there need to be a lot more improvement in terms of practical everyday policies and support for both domestic and foreign companies.
What kind of gaps, for example?
Oh, this would be a long story, so I don't want to
Okay. So you see many opportunities and you feel also a demand by foreign companies wanting to enter and to invest in China?
Absolutely. So I used to be the vice chairman for British Chambers of Commerce in China. So we were representing the British companies in China, and also used to serve on the board with American Chamber of Commerce. Every year, all these major chambers do surveys to companies in China, and you can certainly see the changes in sentiment. And right now, there are companies that are still very worried, but at the same time, there are companies that are still very, very committed. Some companies are adopting China Plus strategy. Some companies are adopting in China for China strategy. But at the end of the day, we certainly see that there are companies that got frustrated and left. At the same time, there are companies that are really trying to find ways to stay in China, if not to actually invest more, because there are a lot of advantages about this market. This is a market that has abundant labor supplies, it's relatively cheap, and at the same time, the economy of scale, that is something that no other countries can really compete with China as of the moment. So while certain companies are actively looking at diversifications away from China, many companies are still find ways to really stay, if not to invest more.
Thank you very much for taking your time. Thank you.
Thank you.